Good morning, mathematicians. We are looking at our lesson 3, unit 5, cool down. We are thinking about thousands in expanded form. So first of all, we can note that here, the shaded region shows us a certain number. So my first job is to write the number as a decimal. So the first thing that I want to do is figure out if this whole square is a whole as it shows, how much of this whole is shaded. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to find out how many tenths I have shaded by counting how many entire columns do I have shaded. I'm going to find that in the rows. I have an entire row here. This is 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, and 5/10. Notice the sixth row is not complete, so this is going to be part of another place value. So I'm going to begin with saying, of course, I'm not looking at any wholes, but I am looking so far at a 5 in the tens place because I see that there are 5 complete rows shaded. Now, to examine the hundredths place, my next place value, I'm going to see exactly how many whole single squares are shaded because this single square is one of 100 that it takes to build this entire shape. So that is the hundredths place. So I'm going to count these single squares. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 entire single squares shaded, so there is a 7 in the hundredths place. Now I'm going to take note of this last single square. This last single square is not entirely shaded. Now it is almost all the way shaded, but it is not entirely shaded. This is demonstrating or modeling the thousandths place. Because if I take a single square and I divide it into 10 rows, each of those rows represents 1,000. Now, if I look at this very carefully and examine it, I'm going to notice that there are 9 rows in this single that are shaded. So that tells me that there's going to be a 9 in the thousandths place. Boys and girls, this is the number that we should have written when we're writing it as a decimal. Now, again, this 0 in the front is optional because with that 0, I have no ones. Without the 0, I still have no ones, right? So that 0 is optional, but I definitely need to have my decimal point, my 5 in the tenths, my 7 in the hundredths, and my 9 in the thousandths. Now we're going to write this as a fraction. Remember, boys and girls, when I read this number, 579, I'm going to hang on this final place value position where my last digit is sitting, and I'm going to say that. So this becomes 579 thousandths because this 9 is in the thousandths place. Well, that tells me that this is 579 out of 1,000 because truly looking at this, how this is divided, how many thousandths do I see here? Well, this is 579 thousandths, which is also built of 5 tenths, 7 hundredths, and 9 thousandths. Now, boys and girls, we're going to write this in expanded form. Now, some of my students, as we did this lesson, remembered expanded form from previous grades, so they started to write expanded form like this. The 5 is in the tenths. The 7 is in the hundredths. The 9 is in the thousands. So you can write expanded form or you simply pull apart the number, but write that digit still in its place value position, but one digit at a time. Another way that we can write expanded form is to pull the digits of our number apart, but we could now multiply them by the value in which they sit. This 5 is sitting in the tenths place. So that is a 5 times 1/10 because I have 5 tenths. This 7 is sitting in the hundredths place. So that is 7 times 100th because I have 7 hundredths. This 9 is sitting in the thousandths place. So that is 9 times 1,000 because in all I have 9,000. Now, what's very important to remember is after you multiply the digit by its position, then yes, we come back and we do add those terms together. Now, to be clear, this expanded form with multiplication, I have written the number, the digit, times its value expressed as a decimal. But I do want us to remember mathematicians see multiple ways that we can write, and we also want to understand this if we see this in different forms. This term, 5 times 1/10, can also be written as this, 5 times 1/10. This part of my term, 7 times 100th, could also be written as this, 7 times 1/100. This part of my term, 9 times 1,000, could also be written as 9 times 1/1000. Of course, I add those terms together. Boys and girls, remember, these are equivalent ways to show this. Those equal the same thing. I'm just expressing, for example, 1/10 in a decimal and 1/10 in a fraction. These are different types of expanded form that you might see. So we do want to be familiar with those various forms, even though for your cool down, of course, you probably have written just one of those, and that is okay. Now, our final step for this cool down, number 4, is to write this number in word form. So we're thinking about how we speak this. We're not writing it with digits and a decimal point. Now we're going to write them with letters and words. I'm going to start at the decimal. I could write 0 and then begin what I'm about to write. That would be perfectly fine, no more or less accurate. But I'm going to begin right here at this decimal. So I'm going to begin with saying this as if it were a regular whole number first. I'm going to say 579, just like I would say if this were a regular old whole number. Write this with me if you haven't already. 579, and then I hang on the place value that my final digit sits in. This 9 is sitting in what place value? It's sitting in the thousandths. So I claim that place value by writing thousandths. I put that all together. It is 579,000.